Hello, my ghouls, goblins, and friends of the abysmal nights. This is a series on my channel called Gothic Americana, How Haunted Are These Roots? And I am your lovely host, Michaela J. Today, I'm in a bit of a new location because I wanted to play some tunes on my youth and because we're going to be talking about music and the devil. So, if you're not afraid of getting haunted, let's get into it, shall we? So I mentioned last week about how bands like Bauhaus and The Cure kind of, set the forefront of what goth music is, talking about that theme of darkness and misery. But I'm sure you're asking yourself, well, who the hell makes Southern Gothic music? I mean, what even is it? Not to worry, I'd argue that artists like Screamin' Jay Hawkins, Johnny Cash, Robert Johnson, and even Beyonce have dipped their toes into this genre and have had made music inspired by this whole subculture. Alas, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. So Southern Gothic music has writing and composition styles from folk, Americana, country, and African American rock and blues. Now the writing itself focuses on themes that are similar to Southern literature, but there's one bit of difference. So similarities include that haunting feeling, the questioning of authority, very descriptive settings such as like plantations and abandoned marshes, rivers, that sort of thing, and just this overall theme of decay and the past. Unlike Southern literature, though, which embraces, finding innocence in the face of corruption, Southern Gothic music kind of likes to be corrupted. It wants to feel that darkness all around and wants you to feel that as well. So I'm just going to list off some of my favorite pieces and songs that I think really fit within the Southern Gothic theme and allure, which includes The House of the Rising Sun, any variation you can think of, where it talks about a man going down in New Orleans and basically kind of ruining his life with the corruption of greed. That vice just destroys him. Then there's Delta Rays, Bottom of the River, which kind of talks about like this drowning woman who you can kind of assume is a witch, and just talks about the death of her and her like being against it. And the sound reminds me a lot of like African American gospel and blues sounds with a lot of like stomping and clapping and stuff like that. Then there's Billie Holiday's Strange Fruit, a very somber blues song, which speaks of the injustice of lynching black folk in the South, black men specifically, and it kind of just reminds you of how when these people were hanged, they would just kind of sit there like rotting fruit. Then there's the Appalachian murder ballad Pretty Polly, which speaks about a woman being lured to the woods and buried in a shallow grave. In some versions of the song, she is married and pregnant with her killer's baby. So those are some of my favorite pieces that I believe kind of capture the whole feel of the Southern Gothic space. But perhaps the best aesthetic explanation of this type of music is Beyonce's Lemonade album. You can watch her videos and you can listen and you find those influences, but basically the whole piece is supposed to take place in the rural South and focus on African American culture, garb, and just everyday life and how history has influenced the present. So the songs mentioned earlier kind of fit into this theme of corruption, whether it's realistic or supernatural. And speaking of the supernatural, where the hell does the devil fit into all of this? Okay, so we all know the glory of The Devil Went Down to Georgia and why that song is an absolute banger. But now we come to question, how and when did the devil become such a big influence in music, especially in the Southern Gothic genre? So we all know that Giuseppe Tartini's Devil's Trill Sonata was the first song to put like a Faustian story behind selling your soul to the devil. But in Southern Gothic Americana, there's a relationship that doesn't have to be that indebted. It's just more about, abandoning of God and letting that evil soak into you, not being afraid of what the darkness can do. With that being said though, Robert Johnson's Hellhound on My Trail does play into the myth of him selling his soul to the devil, but also works as a metaphor for a white mob lynching a black man. So I would be a bad, educator if I didn't mention that a lot of these Southern Gothic tunes are going to have this supernatural influence to talk about the realistic horrors that happen in the South. So that still fits within the genre conventions of questioning authority and stuff. I just wanted to make it clear that a lot of these tunes are going to talk about a lot of issues that a lot of people don't want to face, and that's why it fits so perfectly with our How Haunted Are These Roots series. But anyway, back to the music. Hell in You by Amigo and the Devil talks about a corrupted and toxic love story, and Screamin' Jay Hawkins' whole discography is accused of being influenced by the occult, especially in the song I Put a Spell on You, where he hexes his love interest using hoodoo and voodoo. And then again, there's with modern music people like Beyonce and her relationship or accusation of being with the Illuminati and the cult also kind of plays into the devil being an influence on her. You see, Lemonade was a success, but it just dropped unexpectedly, and she's talking about the horror of her marriage and just being cheated on and stuff like that. And instead of shying away from that dark time period of her life, she embraces the corruption. So it isn't far-fetched for people to be like, oh, this devil has influenced her, when we see that a lot of these other Southern Gothic aesthetic songs and stuff do embrace that corruption and do kind of play into the devil taking over their tunes. I'm just saying. So I know what you're asking, what does this have to do with anything? Well, the devil has always kind of acted as like a mascot for those who feel misunderstood and for people who just want to be accepted and be strange and unusual. In Southern Gothic music, it's interesting just to see how the devil is used to embrace this corruption and just not adhering to tradition of being a sweet, lily white, gospel, good person or whatever. So it's very interesting to me that people who have been accused of having this influence by the devil and the devil taking over and having their soul have been a lot of African American and just poor rural artists, which it's kind of fascinating because in America we demonize those two groups a lot. So it's cool that instead of wanting to be traditional good black or good poor, they're breaking away from that tradition and being no, I'm going to talk about what I feel like I want to talk about and kind of do me. Very fascinating to me. That's probably why I really enjoy it. And what I mean by traditional music and stuff, I'm talking about the regular folk, the regular country, the regular gospel even. But today we're seeing a lot of artists kind of just go off the rails of being traditional and who they're not supposed to be. Take Lil Nas X and how he's kind of said a lot of controversy, but has used the accusations of him being with the devil to his benefits. All in all, this is to say that the devil and his relationship with music is very fascinating to me. If you want to learn more about this, I feel like the YouTube channel Polyphonic did a really good explanation of the history of the devil in music, and I'm interested in seeing how his figure will kind of be incorporated in new music. With all that, I just want to thank all my ghouls, goblins, and creatures of the abysmal night. I have been your host, Michaela J, and this is Gothic Americana, How Haunted Are These Roots? Next episode, we'll be talking about the hoodoo, voodoo, root work, and all that witchy goodness shit. So if you're interested in that, please tune in next week for that episode. If you want to see more of my little face and just support me, please follow my Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok feed, which I have pasted down in the description below, and I will be haunting y'all later.